Everyone thinks because you're a zombie, you don't know good coffee. Well, they're wrong. There's only one brew that gets my seal of approval. Deadly Grounds coffee is my guilty pleasure. The aroma is so intoxicating. It brings all of my neighbors out of the woodwork. Deadly Grounds coffee. Coffee to die for and zombie approved. It's good to get a little deadly. Use the front door! Oh, they're so disgusting.
The Dorkening and all affiliated shows are not intended for anyone under the age of 18. The following may contain discussions or scenes that have adult situations, graphic violence, nudity, strong sexual content, and graphic language. This show is intended for mature audiences only. Viewer discretion is advised.
Ladies and gentlemen, the motion picture you're about to see contains scenes so terrifying, the public must be given grave warning.
Hello and good evening. For the first time here on the Owl Light Network, the Bloody Binge Movie Podcast is coming to you live. I hope everyone's had a great week. Normally, I come to you guys earlier, like on 4 o'clock on Fridays, but unfortunately, my wife had a little bit of a health scare yesterday, so we had to handle that, and I decided to go ahead and move it till today. For those who haven't listened to the Bloody Binge Movie Podcast before, I am Sewer Dweller. I am your host. You can also join me on every other Wednesday night on the Matt and Monsters show here on the Owl Light Network. So, welcome and good evening. Thank you for joining me. We are going to talk Brain Scan tonight. Brain Scan is a 1994 horror, kind of a slasher horror movie, starring Edward Furlong, John Connor himself from Terminator 2, and Frank Langella, who has been around forever doing horror movies. One of the first times I ever saw him growing up was watching The Masters of the Universe, the original movie with Dolph Lundgren, as he plays Skeletor. But as usual, here on the Bloody Binge Movie Podcast, we start with horror and haunted house news. So let's go ahead and get that started right now, and then we'll jump right into the movie. So some of these news stories, again, I got these yesterday. So some of these news stories may be a little old. A lot of people, like I've said on the regular Bloody Binge, you may have already heard some of these news stories. I'm going to put my own take on them, give you my own opinions on them and stuff like that. So definitely jump in the comments. Let me know how everybody's doing. If you know what you're thinking about the stuff going on. But first, we're going to do. We always start with the haunt industry news, because usually this time of year is when it starts picking up. The end of June, beginning of July, into, of course, August and September and October, when the haunts are starting up and haunts are hiring and everything. We get a lot more news. The past few weeks, we've had a lot of Universal Studios news. We're not getting so much of that anymore, as they've pretty much announced outside of their licensed property haunts. They really haven't announced too much more yet, and they haven't really announced those yet. But so starting off, we're going to start with Spirit Halloween is gearing up for the Halloween season by hiring 50,000 seasonal sales associates and store managers for its over 1,500 retail locations early opening later this year. The excitement and enthusiasm of Halloween continues to grow as we gear up for another season. We are looking forward to working with welcoming new associates and store managers to our team, said Steven Silverstein, CEO of Spirit Halloween. Opening over 1,500 retail locations is no small feat, and much of the magic we create for fans each year is thanks to the passion and dedication of our associates who work who bring the Spirit Halloween experience to life. Talking is hard sometimes. In addition to competitive salaries, flexible scheduling, and incentive programs, all Spirit Halloween associates also receive a 30% discount on Spirit Halloween purchases, allowing them to haunt on or off the clock. Not only that, Code Oranges. Let me move this over here real quick. Corpse Garden Chronicles. Yeah, it's a nice hot day up here in Ohio. I will say that it is nice and hot outside, but it's nice and cool in here. Code oranges have been popping up earlier than usual this year. Costco, Joann, and some home goods stores already have Halloween decorations and items in stock. And even more stores are announcing Halloween season previews and pre-orders. Yeah, there's the past few weeks, Spirit has announced like all pretty much a lot of their stuff. Home Depot's announced a lot of theirs, Lowe's. And on top of that, you can go online and order most of this stuff. And I think we're going to talk about that here in a moment. Give me 1 second, please. Sorry about that. Thought I was going to sneeze. All right. Party City has also released its newest Halloween animatronics and decor for pre order. This marks the company's earliest Halloween release date yet. We understand Halloween enthusiasts are looking to add the next spooky, tantalizing, or unique piece to their collections before the season event starts, says Odette Welling, Vice President of Merchandising at Party City. Last year's customers shared they had driven hours to find fan favorite animatronics and groundbreakers, and they wish they could have them sooner. So the company hopes it has made it a little easier for the season's fanatics to get ready for the spooky season. Popular new additions for this year include a 12-foot inflatable Beetlejuice carousel groundbreaker, $170. Embers, the pumpkin skeleton ground breaker, $219. The Cthulhu Watcher, which we did show that a video of that a couple weeks ago on the Bloody Binge, for $400. And what I'm looking for actually, the terrifying teddy bear skill crane for $250. Cracker Barrel also released their Halloween collection featuring over 129 products this year. Their popular Ghost with the Lantern is returning for $59.99 with two variants: Ghost of Darkness with Lantern and Witch with LED Lantern. Pottery Barn has offered a sneak peek at over 200 items in its Halloween shop, from a skeleton cheese board for $99 to a trick or treat bat metal candy bowl, also for $99, to Gus the Ghost Icon drinking glasses, $56. Pottery Barn has a variety of elegantly eerie offerings to elevate your Halloween soiree. Yeah, so one of the positive things about all these companies going ahead and um, offering their stuff early is because people can plan their yards now. People can plan their decorations, their yards, their parties, and everything like that, and then get the animatronics they want and and need to bring it all together. Um, a lot of people want to theme their yards. So, if you're doing a circus theme or like a carnival theme, that bear skill crane works really well in the middle of it. The Beetlejuice the carousel Beetlejuice would look awesome in there too. Uh, so yeah, start your Halloween shopping now. That's what I can tell you. Just because you don't gotta wait for it to come to stores. I mean, I like it better in the stores. I like being able to look at it and touch it before I buy it. But yeah, if you prefer shopping online, now's the time to start your Halloween shopping. Uh, Awards. We got ScareCon in the United Kingdom announced their 2024 Scare Award winners. The 2024 awards were based on attractions that opened or operated significantly between April of 2023 and March of 2024. All 15 categories were judged by the ScareCon and Scare Tour review teams and were scored on specific requirements for each category, including public reviews. Awards were received by Necropolis, Traumatica, Psychopath, Scare City Experience, Scream Nights, Horrorland, Luna Springs, Scream Camp, London Tombs at London Bridge Experience, Thorpe Park Fright Nights, Dr. Fright's Halloween Nights, Primeval, Fear Island, and Doncaster Fear Factory. Unfortunately, this article did not give the award, like say what each company award or haunt won, which is kind of silly. Um, So I'll have to look that up and I'll get back to you guys next week on that one. Moving on, if you live in Coldwater, Michigan, organizers for the Coldwater Halloween Parade have announced this year's theme is Grave Encounters, chosen by the public out of three options. Grave Encounters encompasses anything one might find in a graveyard or a cemetery. Nominations for the Grand Marshal are still being taken, and if you live in Coldwater, Michigan, you could always suggest your nomination at coldwaterholidayparades@gmail.com. So yeah, that just sounds cool. I mean, you get a Halloween parade with a theme. A lot of you know, I haven't seen too many Halloween parades, honestly. I don't think there's one here in Dayton. Outside of, I take it back, in Fairborn we have Foy's, and Foy's does a quick. I think they do a parade at the weekend before Halloween, when they do their Halloween festival. Virginia. I'm originally from Virginia. We didn't do any kind of parades or anything down there, unfortunately. But let's go. Moving on, we also have Zombie. This is actually really interesting. Zombie Joe's Underground Theater Group in North Hollywood, California, will bring the chills and thrills of classic '80s horror to life on July 5th and 6th. Or I'm sorry, July 5th through the 6th, and July 12th through the 13th with '80s Summer Slasher. This immersive theater production invites audiences 18 plus to step into the spooky world of Camp Blood Moon, where they will play a role in a terrifying adventure filled with suspense, scares, and interactive fun. Limited to 9 guests per performance, each guest will be assigned a role based on a personality quiz they take before the show, and their experience will be personalized according to the role they receive. So, this seems like a very detailed, very more involved escape room, except it's a play that you get to participate in. '80s Summer Slasher is directed by Charlotte Cocker and produced by Zombie Joe. Tickets are on sale now for $20 in advance or $25 at the door. That sounds awesome. That would be great to go to. Just you basically you show up, you take a quick personality test, and they decide whether you're the final girl, the jock, all that good stuff in the play. And I guess you're part of the play from the sound of it. And you only got to, and it's only $20. I mean, that's a discount right there. So yeah, if you live in the Northern California area, which part is, I believe was North Hollywood, California, look into that because that sounds like an amazing time. The Ashland Public Library has teamed up with Jeff DePaoli. I am very bad with names, guys. DePaoli, host of That Halloween podcast, for a series of haunted happenings live streams. This free series of live streams features guests from the haunt and horror communities where they share behind the scenes stories. The next event will occur on Thursday, June 20th. I believe we've already passed that at 6:30 p.m. This month's edition will feature Michael Perrone from Kenobi Lake Screamfest in Salem, New Hampshire. Um, so yeah, look that up. Look at them and see when their next stream is, because that sounds like, especially if you're in the haunted houses like I am, that sounds like a fun time to listen to, as well as was it Chainer's Haunted? I think Chainer's here on the Outlight Network is also a haunted house podcast that is very interesting to listen to, and you will enjoy, especially like I said, if you're into haunts as much as we are. Moving on. Okay, this is actually the only piece of Universal Studios news we have, but it's a big one. It's a huge one actually. Universal's Dark Universe may have been a short-lived experience in the world of cinema, but in the world of Universal theme parks, the Dark Universe is just getting started. I believe if I remember right, the Universal Dark Universe is when they started trying to remake a lot of the original horror movies, like your Draculas, your Frankensteins, your Wolfman. Um, so that it didn't go over well because that Wolfman movie was kind of bad. Uh, but earlier this year, Universal announced Universal Epic Universe, a brand new multi-world experience coming to Universal Orlando in 2025. Basically, it's going to be well, I guess a fourth park, because technically Volcano Bay would be the third. Volcano Bay, of course, is a water park. But this will be a third actual amusement park. So you'll have Universal Studios, Universal Islands of Adventure, and now Universal Epic Universe. Um, Coming to Orlando in 2025, the Dark Universe is one of the experience's 5 epic worlds, and today brings full details, concept art, and everything you need to know. Yeah, take a look at it. Go out and look. There's a video out there from Universal. I didn't want to put it on here because I don't want to get copyrighted, and I sure don't want to get anybody else copyrighted. So yeah, I'm not going to put it on here. But there is a video out there. There's pictures out there. So definitely go take a look at those. Press release from the day is "It's alive! It's alive!" Next year, Universal, the pioneer of the horror genre, I'm sorry, will bring its timeless monsters to the present day with the debut of Dark Universe, one of the 5 immersive worlds featured at the all-new Universal Epic Universe opening in 2025. The most mysterious world of Universal Orlando's newest theme park, this captivating new land will envelop guests in monstrous adventures across various attractions, shops, restaurants, and character meet and greets that will thrill everyone from families to classic monster fans alike. Universal's Dark Universe may have. Oh, yeah, that is the same thing I just read. What the hell happened here? All right, there it is. I apologize for that. The most mysterious world of Universal Orlando's newest theme park, this captivating new land will envelop guests in monstrous adventures across various attractions, shops, restaurants, and character meet and greets that will thrill everyone from families to classic monster fans alike. Created by the award-winning Universal creative team in partnership with Universal Pictures, Dark Universe, Dark Universe, a lot of universe. That's a lot of universe words. Blends the iconic stories of unearthly legends like Dracula, the Wolfman, Frankenstein's monster, and the Bride of Frankenstein, and more, with a new generation of monsters and characters, including Dr. Victoria Frankenstein, the great great granddaughter of the infamous Henry Frankenstein, who has continued his misguided experiments. As guests venture through Dark Moor, the ravaged village within Dark Universe, they'll encounter the characters and subjects of those experiments within a first of its kind theme park environment that offers family friendly fun while also pushing the boundaries of intensity in a way that only Universal could achieve. Welcome to Darkmoor. The journey to Dark Universe begins the moment guests enter its electrifying portal, which harnesses the dark energy of Darkmoor. As guests step foot inside, the same energy will pulsate throughout the entire village and connect at the top of Frankenstein Manor, the towering focal point of Dark Universe. Nestled within the blackened stone walls of the town, guests will embark on unique adventures where they can get made up to look like their favorite monsters, spin through the woods aboard a thrilling family coaster, enjoy unique dining establishments, enter Frankenstein Manor to brave Universal Orlando's most chilling ride ever, and more. And then here's some more information about the thrilling yet unsettling attractions and entertainment experiences that await visitors to the Dark Universe. Monsters Unchained, the Frankenstein experiment, Universal Orlando's most terrifying attraction yet. This state of the art dark ride takes guests deep into the catacombs of Frankenstein Manor, where Dr. Victoria Frankenstein conducts her twisted experiments in a vain display of her genius. She invites guests into her laboratory to witness a demonstration of her ability to control monsters. But of course, her plans go awry when her attempts to control the most dangerous of monsters, Dracula, fails, unleashing a horde of enraged monsters. Guests are then thrust into an intense ride through the darkness as they try to evade the grasps of the Wolfman, the Mummy, the creature from the Black Lagoon, the brides of Dracula, and others. Okay, why is this article repeating itself? Yeah, that's not good. Come on. Okay, there's that one. Sorry about that. Here we go. Curse of the Werewolf. Deep in the woods that sit on the edge of Dark Moor, guests will find Curse of the Werewolf, a spinning family coaster inspired by the Wolfman. Guests will enter the encampment of the Guild of Mystics, where they'll be greeted by the Maleva, the Guild's all-knowing seer and leader, who warns them that they bear the mark of the werewolf. Guests then board a wagon and venture into the forest, racing to escape the werewolves before they become one themselves. That sounds really cool. This all sounds really cool so far. Darkmoor Monster Makeup Experience. Guests of all ages can become fashionably monstrous as they don elaborate face paint and temporary tattoos at Darkmoor Monster Makeup Experience. Here, monster makers have converted Dr. Pretorius's infamous old lab into a parlor to continue the spirit of his demented experiments, and skilled artisans use their talents to transform guests' outer appearances so they can showcase their fandom for the Universal monsters. And we have another Meet the Monsters, of course, is probably a meet and greet. There's always someone or something looming in the shadows of the dark universe, including monsters who are eager to meet and greet everyone from kids to adults, including Dr. Frankenstein's monster and the alluring bride of Frankenstein. Guests will also encounter the unusual inhabitants roaming the eerie village, including Victoria Frankenstein's servant. I'm going to assume it's Igor because it's spelled with a Y. It's Ygor. The Invisible Man, but you won't be able to meet the Invisible Man, needless to say, because you can't see him. An eccentric monster hunter and a talented musician who regales guests with songs and tales of the classic Universal monster stories. Well, I do appreciate that. Thank you. Uh, Guests can also sink their teeth into delicious fare and shop all new merchandise and apparel during their visit to Dark Universe at highly themed dining and retail locations, including Das Steakhouse, Darkmoor's most ominous restaurant. This establishment is a dining hall run by vampire familiars who size up unsuspecting patrons to be part of the vampire's feast, surrounded by artwork and artifacts detailing the history of the village's creatures of the night. Guests can enjoy a menu of kebabs, burgers, sandwiches, and more. We also have the Burning Blade Tavern. Despite the blades of the windmills still smoldering and flaming periodically, Darkmoor's monster hunters have transformed this old fiery mill into their favorite hangout. While enjoying a menu of burgers, wings, bratwurst, pretzels, and specialty beverages, guests will hear the stories of the most infamous hounds, boastful hunters from beyond Darkmoor, all while surrounded by an impressive display of the monster heads they considered their trophies. Then we also this is gonna be a big area. The Lacey's Cottage near Frankenstein Manor sits the Lacey's Cottage food stand, where the original Frankenstein's monster once received sustenance and friendship. Here, guests can find a variety of snacks and cool treats like cinnamon bread, ice cream, twisted taters, and more. So, yeah, that is gonna be amazing. Because let's not forget, Universal does really well with, especially in its theming area. Let's not forget how well they've done with Hogwarts and the Harry Potter world in both parks. I have not got to experience it yet. I've actually not been to Orlando well, not Orlando, but Universal Orlando in almost 20 years. They were just building Harry Potter last time I went, and we have not had a chance to go back yet. We went last year, not last year, year before last. We went to Orlando, but we spent most of our time at Disney because the oldest had a band. He was marched in one of the parades with his band. Um, excuse me. But moving on, this is okay. We got a couple of Ohio haunts that are actually open this weekend. Um, and again, I apologize. I was supposed to do the podcast yesterday, but of course, I ran into some personal uh, health problems with the wife, so unfortunately I had to move it to today. So some of this might be old news by now, but this is actually going on right now. Now free entry for all Jeeps and cars. Register. No. Okay, that is basically it's Bunchie's Jeep Jamboree. You get ready for a day of fun and thrills at Munchie's Jeep Jamboree, followed by a night of terror at Clown Invasion. Munchie's Jeep Jamboree and Car Show going on from noon till 8 p.m. tonight. Join us for a high octane celebration of all things Jeep. The Jeep and Car Show. Show off your sleek rides and custom creations. Awards will be given for the best Jeeps and overall on display. So shine them up. Register your vehicle today. All vehicles are accepted. And it's got a free entry. You can register your Jeep for our show and receive admittance to the festival for all your passengers, plus one free Clown Invasion ticket and $5 off additional Clown Invasion tickets. Same thing with the car show, basically. Trophies for Best of Show, Trailblazer, Muddy Masterpiece, People's Choice, Most Likely to Survive a Zombie Apocalypse, and Munchie's Choice. There is live entertainment going on. I think I've seen pictures from it so far, and there's bands playing. There's singers going on and stuff like that. They got food trucks up there. Vendor marketplace where you can browse unique items and Jeep accessories. There's a kids zone with bounce houses and inflatable obstacle course for the little ones. There's axe throwing that you can test your skills and have a blast. The axe throwing is $10 for 15 minutes. There are 10-minute escape rooms you can challenge yourself with themed puzzles for $10. Tarot card readings. Clown invasions. The clown invasion tonight starts at 9 and goes till 11. Now, guys, this is at Haunted Hydro, by the way. I thought the event thing would have said it by now, but yes, this is at Haunted Hydro in, I believe, or right outside of Akron, Ohio, in up north, near Michigan. But the clown invasion goes from 9 to 11. As the sun sets, the clowns take over. Experience the terror of our haunted house where creepy clowns have claimed it as their own. Navigate the twisted corridors and face your fears in this immense horror experience, not for the faint of heart. Come for the cars and stay for the terror. Whether you're a car lover or a thrill seeker, Munchie's Jeep Jamboree and Clown Invasion offer a full day and night of unforgettable fun and frights. Combo tickets are available. So yeah, this is at Haunted Hydro. Let's see. Here, I can read this real quick. Their event page reads: "Prepare to be immersed in a world of whimsical terror as the Haunted Hydro transforms into a haven of harlequins, from jesters to jestresses. This all-clown event promises a night of spine-tingling entertainment and hair-raising encounters, with a mix of eerie performances, haunted mazes, and mischievous antics. Clown Invasion is not for the faint of heart. So don your brightest nose and bravest smile and join us for a night you'll never forget if you make it out alive." Haunted Hydro is located at 1333 Tiffin Street in Fremont, Ohio. That just sounds like that sounds like an amazing time. If you like, if you're scared of clowns, if you want to get scared, it's the summer. How often do you find a professional haunt open in the summertime? Not very often, in all honesty. So if you see one open, you find one, take advantage of it. The haunt industry definitely is a very fun one to be part of, in all honesty. Um, but moving on, we're going to head on down to Kentucky, where Black Orchard Haunted House in Shelbyville, Kentucky, is also opening their doors for this weekend for their summer slaughter. Black Orchard will be open two nights from tonight, June 21st, and Saturday night, June 22nd. So last night and tonight, 9 p.m. to midnight, both nights. Black Orchard is located at 704 Kentucky Street in Shelbyville, Kentucky. I've seen videos of Black Orchard. I have not got to go there yet, but the videos look awesome. They really get into it down there. So if you're anywhere near Shelbyville, Kentucky, which I think it's right out, I think it's south of Louisville. I'm not 100% sure though. Um, get out, check that out tonight, 9 to midnight. Support the haunt industry. Also, if you're in Dayton, Ohio, and I believe Raz can, I don't know if Raz is watching or not, but Raz can tell me if I'm wrong, but I believe we are having at Hell's Dungeon in Dayton, Ohio. I believe we are still having a walk-in interviews tomorrow for mostly for merchandise. I think we're looking for merchandise sales, security, and um, there's something else we're looking. I can't think off the top of my head, but I think it's makeup. I think we're looking for makeup as well. We're still looking for a couple of actors, but if you have experience, come check us out. If you're over the age of 18, or you do need to be over the age of 18 unless you have experience. If you have experience in the haunt industry and you are under the age of 18, feel free to come talk to us anywhere. I mean, anywhere. If you're no matter where you are in this country, look up your local haunted houses. This is the time of year they all start hiring. They all start doing auditions. It is very rare that you audition or apply for a haunt that you don't get the job. All right, doesn't matter who you are, what you do, what you are. If you see a haunt hiring and you're interested in getting into the industry, uh, apply. Go talk to the people at the haunt. They're always looking for new people, always looking for talent. If you want, if even if you just want to help out with parking or security or anything like that, like I said, it is very rare that a haunt will turn you away. Um, so yeah, but that's gonna do it for the haunt industry news this week. We got a couple of stories in the horror, and wasn't a very strong horror news this story this week, or a news week this week. So let's move on to the horror movie news. The first one, and unless I guess you lived under a rock the past couple of days. Legendary actor Donald Sutherland, father of Kiefer Sutherland, has passed away at the age of 88. Um, Very legendary actor, very amazing actor. I don't know the last time he's been in a bad movie. I know a lot of people say Fool because he was in Fool's Gold with Matthew McConaughey and Kate Hudson. I kind of enjoyed it, but a lot of people hated it just because. Um, but that's the last time. That's the last movie I think I saw him, and I didn't watch any of the Hunger Games movies where I know he plays the president. Um, but he's of course in the horror movie industry. He's most well known for Don't Look Now and Invasion of the Body Snatchers. Um, if you've seen Invasion of the Body Snatchers, he's the guy at the end doing the weird point. Uh, he was also in Buffy the Vampire Slayer, which, if I remember, it's been a while since I've seen Buffy. I think he plays the Giles character in the movie, um, in a movie called Virus. So rest in peace, Donald Sutherland. Definitely be missed. Like I said, I'm not going to go too deep into that because everybody's been talking about that for a couple of days now. What I will go deep into, though, is A24 and Peacock's planned Friday the 13th television series, Crystal Lake, went up in smoke earlier this year, with the showrunner Brian Fuller from Hannibal being fired from the project and leaving the fate of the small screen project unclear. So, what really happened? The Warp just dropped one hell of an exclusive report untangling the behind the scene mess. So this all comes. A lot of this comes from the Warp. I think this is an article I got from Fangoria, but a lot of the sources from this is the Warp. Uh, to refresh your memory before we dive in, Peacock had given the project a straight to series order in 2022, with Crystal Lake being described as an expanded prequel to the original Friday the 13th franchise, featuring both Jason Voorhees and his mother Pamela. According to the Wrap's new report, Charlize Theron was being eyed to play Miss Voorhees. Other news details from the Wrap's report reveal that the episode, written by Kevin Williamson from Scream, was going to take place entirely on a frozen crystal lake, with Williamson recently describing the episode as an hour-long chase. Friday the 13th fans have been begging for a winter set Friday installment for many years, and A24 was set to deliver just that. Additionally, Vincenzo Natali, Cube and Splice, and Kimberly Pierce, Boys Don't Cry and Carrie, were set to direct episodes, with the budget ballooning to around $10 million per episode. That would have been a hell of a show. With 8 episodes in total planned for the first season, it would have cost A24 roughly $85 million to bring the series to life, with additional seasons planned by the studio. The Wrap's report notes, in the grand ambition of Crystal Lake, each season would be a deconstruction of the first 4 Paramount movies. The series would incorporate lore from several sequels, but remix that material in a way similar to Fuller's Hannibal. Vincenzo Natali had recently tweeted, I have read the first 2 episodes. Brian Fuller's Crystal Lake was well on its way to becoming another Hannibal level reinvention that was simultaneously beautiful, sad, poetic, funny, and horrifying. I mourn its passing. I mean, are you really supposed to dig deeper into Jason Voorhees, though? I mean, we all know we all know what Jason Voorhees is and was meant to be. He's a slasher. He's supposed to go around killing people. So what happened? According to the Wrap, Brian Fuller was fired from Crystal Lake just 3 months before production was set to begin this summer. The Wrap notes Crystal Lake was plagued by inexperienced production executives making questionable decisions, problems with the show's writing staff, and conflicts between showrunners and executives. You can read more about those issues in the Wrap's report, which dives deep into a handful of behind-the-scenes challenges that led to A24 pulling the plug on Fuller's vision of the series. The good news, A24 reportedly hasn't given up on the series itself at this time. A24 and Peacock are now searching for a showrunner for the series, with Nick Antosca from Channel Zero reportedly in the mix to potentially take over. The Wrap notes, according to one source close to the project, A24 is still committed to making the show, although it's unclear if the studio will use the original Fuller scripts and outlines or start from scratch with new creative leadership. The website's report goes on to indicate that if Nick Antosca does end up as showrunner, he would jettison the work already done. What an excellent day. Okay, sorry, that's another story. But yeah, it basically Fuller was fired. They can't get this. They can't get the show made. For the longest time, they couldn't because of the lawsuit between, I think it's Sean Cunningham and Victor. What's his name? Can't remember his last name, but there was um a lawsuit going on about who actually owns the right to Jason, because Victor claimed that he owned it because he did the first, Victor Miller, I think his name maybe, um, that he did the first Friday. He talked, basically Jason was a character in the first Friday. He just didn't really show up until the very, very, very end. Um, Whereas Sean Cunningham, um, claimed he was the owner of the Jason property, not the Friday the 13th, but the Jason Voorhees property, because he brought Jason to life in part 2. So there was a big long lawsuit. It actually killed the video game, completely killed the video game, um, the Friday the 13th video game. And we're just now coming out of that with Victor winning the lawsuit. So we'll see what's going to go on and see if this actually gets made. I hope it does, just because I love Jason. Jason is one of my favorite horror slashers. So yeah, hopefully it gets made. Hopefully they can get their shit together and get it done. All right, but moving on. What an excellent day for an exorcism. What day are we referencing exactly? Friday, March 13th, 2026. You can mark your calendars because that's the date Universal Pictures has set for Mike Flanagan's new Exorcist movie. Per The Hollywood Reporter, it appears that Blumhouse and Universal don't want to rush the filmmaker to meet an arbitrary release date. Rather, they intend to let him take adequate time to make the movie he wants to make. Originally, Halloween director David Gordon Green was set to helm The Exorcist Deceiver, which was going to hit theaters in 2025. That was to be the second installment in a new Exorcist trilogy, which began last year with last year's The Exorcist Believer. Unfortunately, critics and audience didn't respond kindly to that film, which led Universal and Blumhouse to take things in a new creative direction, and that's where Flanagan comes into play. Mike Flanagan was officially announced as the director of the new Exorcist film in late May, as the director of movies such as Gerald's Game and Doctor Sleep, as well as the creative force behind shows like The Haunting of Hill House and Midnight Mass. He's arguably one of the most respected voices in working in horror today. That's what the article says. That really doesn't reflect my opinion. I don't really know much about him, so I can't really give an opinion. But that is what the article says. I don't want um, anyone thinking that that is my opinion, because I really don't have one. The studio made it clear that this will not be a sequel to Believer, as was the original plan. Rather, Mike Flanagan is being given the freedom to tell a whole new story within the franchise. As it stands, plot details remain firmly under wraps, and there's also no word on potential casting. It's unclear if anyone has from any of the previous films will be brought. So basically, it's a lot of we don't know, we don't know, we don't know. Um, so basically, they're going to release um, yeah, they're going to release the new Exorcist movie on Friday the 13th in 2026. Uh, I'll be keeping an eye out for that. I do like the Exorcist movie, the original Exorcist. I haven't seen the newest one as of yet, but I met the girls. I met the girls earlier this year at Horror Hound, the two girls who played in the movie, and they're really cool. They're really nice girls. Just I know the movie didn't get the best reviews in that. Moving on, we have Jason Blum and James Wan are collaborating via their production company on a pseudo sequel to Megan, with another numerically stylized movie titled Soulmate. Soulm, the number 8 TE. This film is dated for January 2nd, 2026. So apparently 2026 is going to be the year of Blumhouse. Jason Blum and James Wan are collaborating via their production company on a pseudo. Yeah, we already read that. I don't know why this is repeating itself again. According to a press release, the film is labeled as an erotic thriller. In it, a man acquires an artificially intelligent android to cope with the loss of his recently deceased wife. In an attempt to create a truly sentient partner, he inadvertently turns a harmless love bot into a deadly soulmate. The film is in the tradition of the 90s domestic thrillers, but with a modern technological twist. Kate Dolan, You Are Not My Mother, will direct Soulmate. Soulmate is a thrilling and seductive addition to the Megan universe. We're excited to partner with Kate to bring their story to life with her unique cinematic vision and point of view, said Juan. Dolan also adds, fundamentally, I view this film as an exploration of relationships and loneliness. Despite technological advances, there are enduring human truths we cannot escape, and I am looking forward to delving into those depths. So basically, the guy's gonna get himself a sex robot. That's the nicest way to put it. He's getting a sex robot, and apparently, it's going to turn evil. That sounds like the gist of the movie. Could be fun. It could be fun, although I think some of us may have seen movies like that late night on Cinemax back in the early 2000s. But we'll see what they can do with it. I'm not gonna shit on the movie already. Uh, Moving on, we got a couple more, so only a couple more stories. Then we'll take a quick break, and then we'll get into Brain Scan. It may seem like we haven't had another Jeepers Creeper movie in a while, because the last one was just awful. It was. I took my oldest to see it in theaters, and even at the end, there was a scene where even he was like, "What the fuck?" While that might be reason enough to kill the series, the real cause is litigation. So the YouTube channel Critical Overlord seems to have made it his mission to follow the developments of the future of the franchise, including the status of Jeepers Creepers 5. Some of you may not know that the studio behind Jeepers Creepers Reborn, the third sequel, the shit one, Infinity Films, is currently in court defending itself against accusations of breach of contract. Myriad Pictures, who produced the sequel, and its follow-up contend the execs behind Reborn bypassed them when it came to distributing rights, which they are supposed to have legally. Instead, the defendant is accused of using screen media. The court case has been ongoing since 2022. Another hearing was held this month, and there are more to follow. Why is this repeating itself again? Give me 1 second, guys. I'm sorry. Here is the initial accusation via Critical Overlord's tweet. This case involves the alleged breach of a right of first negotiation and last refusal for worldwide distribution rights to subsequent horror productions of the horror franchise Jeepers Creepers. Cross-defendant Myriad Pictures Incorporated alleges in the complaint having a contractual right of first negotiation and last refusal for worldwide distribution writes 2 subsequent productions. Cross-defendant further alleges that the defendants produced and filmed Jeepers Creepers 4 without cross-defendant's knowledge or involvement, even though cross-defendant has been working with defendants to develop the sequels throughout 2018 and 2019. Once the film was shot, defendants purported to extend to cross-defendant a right of last negotiation, which was illusory because defendants had already granted, basically from the reading. I'm not going to read all of this because it's just a lot of legal mumbo jumbo. But the gist of it is, I guess one company says they were supposed to, basically the company suing the other two were supposed to have the distribution rights to Jeepers Creepers, to all the sequels. The last Jeepers Creepers, which I believe was part 4, which, God, I hated that movie so much. From if I remember right, I believe 90% of it was shot. I can't talk today. Shot CGI because it was supposed to release right, and they were still filming it right in the middle of COVID back in 2020, and they couldn't finish the movie until about a year or so later. Of course, when it started, COVID started to die down. The pandemic started to die down a little bit, and it seems like, I guess, they made part 4 and they distributed part 4 with a different company than they were supposed to have. And that's what is basically being decided right now. But that's not all. In court documents, the defendants are allegedly still working on Jeepers Creepers 5 without Myriad again. So basically, they're making the next movie as well, and they're doing it without the company that's supposed to have distribution rights, which adds a new layer of conflict to the dispute. So basically, normally at this point, a judge would look at him and go, "You got to stop making that movie until we just figure out what the hell's going on here." It's Critical Overlord's opinion that the people behind Part 5 are going to make the movie one way or the other. They are just waiting for the case to be over. He looked up the background of the dispute and read it to his viewers. Plaintiff also alleges the defendants are currently producing a 5th installment of the film franchise without their knowledge of involvement. Myriad Pictures contend that they have first negotiation, last refusal to any project involving Jeepers Creepers. It may seem like we haven't had. It has repeated itself for a 3rd time now. Why? Blah, blah, blah. I think I'm done with this story, though. I think that was the last line of the story, if I remember right. Yeah, so basically, they're producing another movie. Myriad says they have first negotiation, final say. So basically, they get to they get to be the first to decide whether they're going to distribute it, and the final refusal. So basically, unless they go, "Hey, we're not going to distribute this," the people making Jeepers Creepers 5 shouldn't, or any of the other sequels, shouldn't have gone to another movie, or another company. That's essentially the argument here. Beyond the wheels of justice, one might wonder why anyone would want to add to a franchise that died with Reborn. The answer might be simple. Horror movies are cheap to make and yield a high return, even if they are bad. I would have agreed to that until horror movies started essentially dominating the theater industry lately. They are cheap to make, they're easy to make, and they everybody always goes and sees the horror movies. But again, I would disagree considering how successful horror movies have been for the past, I'd say, year and a half to 2 years. Um, Additionally, the Creeper is an iconic character, and given the right script and the cast, the franchise could rebound with something special rather than a low grade cash grab. That last movie was a cash grab. The last movie was terrible. However, there is a pall over the brand already since the original creators and director, Victor Salva, was sentenced to 3 years in prison in 1988 for sexual misconduct involving a minor. The discovery does not sit well, or that discovery does not sit well with fans of the franchise, even though today Salva's only attachment is as the creators of the characters. So yeah, people don't forget. They don't forget this kind of stuff. Something even if it happened 20, 30, 40, that's actually 40 years ago almost. People don't forget it. It comes back to haunt you every single time. Victor Salva hasn't been involved in the movie though since the original, but in all honesty, the original was really the only good one. The second one was all right, but the first one was only the really good one. But all right, guys, that's gonna wrap up the news portion of our show today. We're gonna take a quick break, real quick, and then we'll come back with our feature presentation for the day, Brain Scan. See you guys in about a minute or two.
Greetings and shabibans. We are the Retro Reductopus Cephala Podcast, a long-form bi-weekly show that celebrates all the things that made growing up awesome.
Well, that sounds good, but I don't know what all those words mean.
I think what Parasite Steve's trying to say is that on Retro Redoctopus, we explore a range of retro goodness, from toys, video games, and movies, to cartoons, and even snacks and school lunches.
Oh.
And we do it all with a positive spin, a slew of killer guests, and some very adult language.
And you know what else is cool?
No.
This crazy show is part of the Door King Podcast Network with new episodes every Tentacle Tuesday.
What's that?
And if waiting 2 weeks for a new episode gives you a sad, know that we drop bonus episodes all the time, like the off-format Crow's Nest and an interview series we call The Brig.
You can listen to Retro Redoctopus on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, or any app that's cool enough to carry the only show that celebrates all the things that make growing up awesome.
And welcome back to the Bloody Binge Movie Podcast on the Owlite Network. We are doing Brain Scan today. Brain Scan is a 1994 is when it was released. It is a technology horror movie based on a video game. It stars, let's get to the cast. Edward Furlong as Michael. Edward Furlong, everybody will probably remember him more from his appearance in Terminator 2. Judgment, I believe it was Terminator 2 Judgment Day, if I remember right. He plays young John Connor. He went on to play a few other things. I know he had a lot of personal and drug issues when he got older, but we're looking at teenage Edward Furlong for now. Frank Langella playing Detective Hayden. Frank Langella has been in so much stuff. Anywhere from Hammer horror movies back in the day, Frost Nixon, Robot and Frank. I don't know if anybody remembers the comedy movie Dave from back in the 90s, where Kevin Kline plays a guy who's I pretty much identical to the president. He played like he acted as the president. God, what do you call it? One of his impersonators or something. Um, during the State of the Union address or like a speech, so they could sneak the president out the back. He went out the front. A decoy. That's what it is. Um, and then the president dies having a basically having a heart attack during sex with the mistress, and Dave has to take over as the president. Great movie, great comedy movie. But Frank Langella plays I believe the can't remember if he's Secretary of State or the head of the cabinet. Can't remember who he plays, but he plays, and he did a really good job in that. Also, basically, he's been a lot of like I said, he's played. I know he's played Dracula before, and I want to say he played him maybe a couple of times in Hammer before either before or during or after Christopher Lee left. But Frank Langella is a legendary actor. T. Ryder Smith, if you watch this movie, he plays the trickster, and this is only his second movie that he's ever done, and he did a really good job. Looking at his IMDb, he's done a lot more voice actor work for video games and that than he has anything else. He's appeared on a couple of TV shows for like an episode or so, like Law and Order, New York Undercover, Nurse Jackie, Law and Order Special Victims Unit. But like I said, does a lot more voices for like Grand Theft Auto 4, BioShock. He was on the Venture Brothers, but he does a lot more character and work like that. We have Amy Hargreaves in one of her first appearances in a movie. Again, nothing major. She was in 20 episodes of Homeland, 49 episodes of a show called 13 Reasons Why. And just a lot of like, low budget stuff and things like that, or like not really low budget, but independent movies and that. Not a lot of stuff that I've seen. Um, she plays Kimberly in the movie, and I think a lot more of the characters are really just Jamie Galen or Galen as Kyle didn't really do much. It doesn't. Yeah, looking at his too, it's really nothing major. Um, he actually went from 2006 to 2014 not doing anything. Um, he plays the best friend Kyle in the movie. Uh, and that's really, I mean, that's really it. There's really no other bigger names in here. A lot of people that are names that anybody would have heard of. So let's go ahead and move on to the movie Brain Scan. So the movie opens up with a bunch of lights overhead. Basically, it's like you're laying on the gurney being pushed down a hallway with a bunch of the incandescent lights going over you. Um, and it flips back and forth a few times between this. There's a house with a large yard, and then there's a teenager. It's essentially Michael, Edward Furlong's character, having a nightmare in his bed. Then it kind of keeps switching back to like basically a blacktop pavement rain during the rainstorm. You'll see this pair of legs that has like blood on it and just dragging themselves, and you find out it's a very young Michael. And it keeps flipping back and forth to the hospital and that, the hospital and that. Um, and then you see Michael crawl up on essentially his dead mother. They had just been in a car crash, and the mom had died. Keeps going again. It keeps going back and forth between that, um, and him being like quote unquote operated on. And then finally, then basically we finally go to Michael, who like startles himself awake like any basically, if you've seen a movie where someone wakes up from a nightmare, it's the same way. They wake up the same way every single time. But he's waking up because his computer has an alarm going off saying telephone master. He's got this really cool computer setup in his house where, and it's very ahead of its time because it's almost got Bluetooth on it. Like he can speak while walking around the room through his computer and that. Um, and it has basically this program on there, Igor, um, who basically tells him, telephone master. Uh, Michael says, "Talk to me," and the computer basically answers the phone for him. And like I said, it's way, way advanced for 1994 technology, but it's his friend Kyle. And Kyle starts basically going on about this brand new video game called Brainscan, the ultimate experience in interactive terror. Kyle goes on, he reads the ad some more, and Michael tells him, calm down, dude. It's just an ad. It's all for hype. But and Michael reminds Kyle about how excited they got for a game called Gore Beast and how trash it was. Kyle says to just look at the ad, and to look at the ad, it's in Fangoria. Tells him what page it's on. Kyle reads off, and this is basically what the ad says. We dare you to participate in the most frightening experience available on this planet. State of the art, run amok, unleash the dark side of your soul, enter a game that feels more than reality. Michael then notices something off in the distance from his room, and it's his attractive blonde neighbor who is now undressing in front of her window. Michael spies on her a little bit. He's looking at her from his. Michael lives in the attic of the house, by the way. He doesn't live in the bottom. He lives in the attic. Hold on one second. Sorry about that. Didn't think you guys want to hear me cough. It's his. Let's see. Michael's basically spies on her as Kyle keeps reading from the Fangoria article. Um, it's Kimberly, the neighbor. Kimberly puts on some perfume as Michael grabs a video camera to start recording because he's a pervert. Um, but the weird thing is Kimberly really starts to act like she knows he's watching her and filming her. She walks over to the mirror, takes her top off. You get a little bit of side boob, and then she basically turns around and it immediately cuts away before she turns fully around. Um, so no topless shot. Uh, and Kyle basically, rudely interrupts him. Kyle asks how Kimberly's looking tonight, like he already knows that Michael's being a perv. Um, Michael's basically like, huh? What? No, I don't know what you're talking about. What are you talking about? No. But Kyle pretty much knows he's full of shit. Kimberly looks out her window again, knowing that he's watching, basically, like she's putting on a show for him. Um, Kyle tells him he needs to go ahead and make a move before some jock on the football team does. Michael turns his television on and basically watches the 1994 live feed to Kimberly's bedroom again. He is able to do this in 1994 to basically put the camera in his window aimed right at her bedroom, and he can watch it from his couch or his chair. Kimberly walks back in front of her window with a whole new shirt on. It is nighttime, and I guess she's getting ready to go out or something. Because she's still got her jeans and everything else on. But Michael and his blue balls are now pissed. Michael tells Igor, basically his computer, to dial Kimberly. And basically the phone rings. We get that, the old timey, the sound of a phone when a phone rings. Michael watches her walk to the phone and basically hangs up on her before she gets a chance to answer. Now Michael has Igor dial the number for brain scan. The number for brain scan, if you were interested, is 1-800-555-FEAR. So basically, when the phone gets answered, he thinks it's being answered by a machine, so he starts leaving his name and number, and then but it's a person. He tells the person he just read their article in Fangoria, and he's actually just wanted to know what the big deal was. The voice says it's the most frightening experience you'll ever have the displeasure of coming into contact with. Michael asks what BrainScan is about. The voice says what makes BrainScan unique is that it interfaces with your subconscious. You supply the inspiration, and they take care of the rest. Michael starts to ask how they expect him to believe him. And then all of a sudden, Michael starts basically spasming in his chair like he's being electrocuted. There's like an electrical sound going off and all that good stuff. It stops and he sits up and goes and just basically like, "Whoa!" The voice tells him to let them worry about that, and that it's been decided that he's going to play Death by Design, and that the first installment will arrive soon. Enjoy the ride. Michael has Igor redial the number and basically just gets the busy signal. So already we're starting off pretty strong. The electrocution in the chair, the storyline of Michael in love with the girl across, the girl next door, watching her dress and all that good stuff, like a pervy teenager would. Um, but in kind of secret, she kind of likes it. She kind of knows he's watching. His buddy Kyle, they're both like really big into horror movies. There's like heavy metal posters and horror movie posters all over the place. Um, so yeah, that's how we started the movie. Very, like I said, very strong start to the movie. Especially with the scene where he's getting electrocuted in the chair. I kind of like that. So we cut to school the next day, and the class is watching a horror movie. Um, Basically, it's the horror movie club that Michael is the president of. Michael isn't very impressed with the movie. It's an old classic. Principal. Then all of a sudden, the principal busts into the room, and he isn't very impressed. He's basically not very impressed with the film choice, and has Michael go to his office. The principal tells him that the activities period was created for intellectual enrichment, which is why he has a problem with the horror club. The principal says senseless violence is not entertainment. He asks Michael why he watches these type of movies, and Michael tells him it's like an escape. The principal asks if it's similar to lighting up a marijuana cigarette and escaping the real world, or if it's like watching a pornographic sex film, getting an erection, and raping women. Right? Wow, that came out of left field. Like, well, you went straight there, huh? Michael says erections don't rape women, but people do, and the principal just basically essentially disbands the horror club and tells Michael that if he wants to keep it going, he has to bring him the next movie he plans to show to class, the next movie or game that he wants to show to the class. The principal will watch it or play it, and if he can stand it, if he approves, Michael will be allowed to show it. Michael's pissed, but the principal essentially dismisses him out of the class. Like that came way out of left field. It's like, are we're going to compare horror movies to watching porno and getting an erection and raping women. Wow. But again, it's 1994, so I mean, we're still right there on the verge of the satanic panic. Right? Actually, I think 94 we may have been right in the middle of the satanic panic. So yeah, but that shit just came out of left field. We cut to Michael. Michael's riding home from school now on his scooter. Uh, He rolls up basically on the scene on what it looks like an accident. They really don't tell you what it is, but they're basically putting a dead body in a body bag and putting it in an ambulance. Michael has a quick flashback to his mom's, the accident that killed his mom, and now we meet Detective Hayden, Frank Langella, who asks Michael where he lives or if he knows the people involved in the accident. Michael says no, and Hayden basically says, "Well, then this is none of your business. Fuck off." He tells Michael to go home. Michael leaves, pulls up to his house, grabs the mail, and he finds an envelope in the mail marked brain scan. And he looks and goes, I didn't order this. Well, if you'd have paid attention about, last night when you called them, they kind of said you were getting the game. They told you you're going to fucking play. Uh, so he gets in, plays his answer machine, and it's his dad leaving a message asking about life in school. So basically, now we find out his dad's not around. His dad's actually on a business trip, and I guess he leaves Michael home alone like this all the fucking time. Uh, Mike looks at a few pictures, basically looks around the room at the house at a few pictures of his mom and that, and basically is him as a kid and how when times were better, essentially. Cut to later that night, and Kimberly is having a party at her house. Michael stares out the window for a minute, and we know that it's the 90s. We're reminded that it's the 90s because we have White Zombie playing at the party. Um, I can't remember the damn name of the song, but it was definitely a White Zombie Rob Zombie song. Michael decides to open up the brain scan game, and he puts the disc into his CD-ROM, and he has Igor dial 1-800-555-FEAR, of course, the number for brain scan. He also tells Igor that no calls. So basically, he wants Igor to block all calls, which backfires immediately because right at that time, Kimberly tries to call him to invite him to the party. During this scene, I get like I already said, we get reminded because White Zombie's in the background. Brainscan picks up and says, "Listen care." See if I can do the voice. Listen carefully. For the next 2 hours, you're going to experience mind program entry. That's a powerful force, not unlike hypnosis, transmitted through the television's blinking signal. It's going to alter your reality. You'll be watching a murder through the eyes of a killer, and you'll affect his actions. It won't be pretty. There is one limitation. You must stalk and kill within the time limit of the program. Video games are ancient history. This is the first disc in 4. If time runs out, you'll not play the next disc. That could be extremely dangerous. Do not let that happen. One final detail. You must think like a killer. Cover up any clues. Leave no witnesses, no evidence. And most importantly, enjoy the fear. The voice disappears into static, and the words "press play to begin" pop up. Michael takes a seat in his chair, grabs his TV remote control, and says, "Let's party." And the game begins. Basically, it's almost like you're being drugged through a tube, into the video game. There is a 60-minute time limit as he enters the game. The voice, and you're basically taken in front of a house. Um, and it's a first person point of view, this entire scene right here. The voice continues to give instruction. He's like, the gate, go into the gate, you know, enter the house, all that stuff. He gets into the kitchen, and the voice just says, pick one. And you see a black gloved hand reach up and grab a butcher knife from the kitchen. He slowly walks up the stairs, basically searching the house for a victim. He finds a guy sleeping in his bed, and he circles the bed momentarily. He literally puts the knife to the guy's eye, and the voice is saying, "Do it, do it." The guy ends up rolling over onto his stomach, and essentially the arm stabs him in the back repeatedly. The man wakes up, blood everywhere, stumbles across the room, falling over, tripping over, falling over a bunch of stuff, and finally falls down dead in the middle of the room. Um, the voice tells Michael to make sure he's dead, and Michael kicks him a few times with his foot. Uh, there's a tattoo. There's basically a tattoo on his foot, and the game tells Michael he needs a prize. So Michael takes the knife, cuts off the guy's foot, leaves the guy. There's a weight sheet on the floor. There's blood everywhere. Michael leaves the guy in his room. Essentially, if the guy's not dead, he's gonna bleed out soon. The voice tells Michael that he got what he came for and to put it in a safe place. The timer comes back on the screen. Michael wakes up, and he's got just under 10 minutes left. Michael wakes up basically from the game, and he's covered in sweat, and he's just all excited. He jugs down some milk that's sitting next to him. Um, and he's excited. He's coming down from that high, of thinking he's playing a video game. Michael goes on about how intense and insane that was, and he brags about how he kicked ass with time to spare. Uh, Throws on some heavy metal music, sits back, closes his eyes, and relaxes for a little bit. That ends the scene. And it's a good scene. It's a really good scene. The first kill was really bloody. If you like that kind of thing, pretty violent and very creative, from the first person point of view, stabbing the body. Hold on one second. Sorry about that. So moving on. The next day, we go to Kyle and Michael. They're walking through a construction site. Michael's telling Kyle about the game. Michael tells about all the blood and his hands were shaking as he was doing it. Kyle asks Michael if he has the game on him. Michael gets a little apprehensive and basically says, I just want to play it a few more times, then I'll let you borrow it. Uh, they almost get hit by a cop car as it flies by. And they part ways, saying buddies forever. Michael puts basically goes upstairs, puts the next disc, or it's not the next disc. I think it just puts a disc in the computer. Tells Igor to dial 1-800-555-FEAR. Brain scan comes on and then goes straight to static, so nothing's happening. Michael looks out and decides basically sees Kimberly pull up in her car and walk inside. Michael decides to grab a fucking set and go next door to talk to Kimberly. Basically, he goes over, knocks on the door. Kimberly's dad answers. He asks Kimberly's parents if he could speak to her about homework or something. They kind of obviously don't like him, but they let him in anyways. I think they're like, yeah, this dude's harmless, whatever. While inside, the mother switches on the news, and lo and behold, there's been a grisly murder in Mount View. The body of a 42-year-old man was discovered in his home. The news never show a picture from his, or the news shows a picture of him signed from a handprint that Michael left in his video game. Michael immediately gets scared as he realizes how similar it was to the murder he made in his video game. He asks Kimberly's parents to let her know that he'll drop by later, and essentially runs out of his house all the way back to his attic. Turns on the news as they are wheeling the body out, and the news anchor reports that the police are searching for the murder weapon. The news anchor also reports that the victim's foot was missing from his body. Michael slowly starts to realize he may have actually killed a guy. We cut outside, basically to right outside the murder scene. Michael's in the crowd of onlookers. For some fucking reason, Michael crosses the police line and basically walks into the yard, sees a few similar things from the night before, and Detective Hayden walks out of the house at that moment, and asks Michael if he's following him. Michael says he can explain, and Hayden tells him he doesn't have anything. You don't have anything to explain, or do you? He tells Michael that he's inside of a police line and tells him to go home again. So Michael leaves. You don't really question it. Just Michael leaves. Back inside Michael's attic, he's remembering the voice telling him to put the foot in a safe place. Michael goes over to the freezer, opens the door, and there's the foot from the night before. It has now dawned on Michael that, yeah, you just actually brutally murdered a man. He heads back upstairs, and the operator tells him the fear number is unlisted, and he loses his shit. Then Igor comes on and tells Michael that he has a phone call. The brain scan logo comes on Michael's TV. Michael looks over, and the voice says, "Hello, Michael." Michael screams at the voice, asking who they are and what did they do. The voice tells him he should ask himself that stuff. Basically, he should ask himself that. The voice says Michael was there and he knows exactly what he did. Then all of a sudden, a head starts coming out of the television. Once the head's off, it morphs into an entire person with a red mohawk. And now we finally get to meet the Trickster. Trickster introduces himself to Michael, he tells Michael that he controlled the disc and what happened. Michael asks how he got in there, and Trickster tells him, "You invited me. That's how it always works." He starts throwing around some of Michael's CDs. Again, a reminder that it is the 90s. We still have CDs. And asks Michael if he has anything good. Trickster then busts out his own CD from his jacket and plays it, and it's some weird music. He starts dancing in the room. Trickster starts dancing in the room. Michael tells him to knock it off and shuts off the music. Michael asks who killed that man and what was on that disc. Trickster says the murder. Trickster tells Michael he didn't think he was going to go through with it, but it was magic watching the man dance around the room. Michael screams it wasn't supposed to be real. Trickster tells him, real? Unreal? What's the difference? So long as you don't get caught. Michael says there's a big difference and it doesn't make sense. Trickster says it doesn't need to make sense. All these horror movies you watch, this death makes sense. And now I feel attacked. Because, fuck you, Trickster. And Michael tells Trickster he didn't kill the man and he didn't even know him. Trickster tells him that's the beauty. Michael has no motive. It was totally random, like in the animal world. Prey has a name. It's just Prey never has a name. It's just primal. Trickster says he can't wait to see what Michael does next, and Michael says there is no next. Trickster says he must eliminate the witness. Michael asks if there was a witness, and Trickster says there's two, but I won't turn you in. Even if they pump me full of electricity, and then basically this blue lightning starts surrounding Trickster like he's being electrocuted. They could also bust my fingers off one by one, and every time he says one by one, he bends his fingers all the way back, essentially breaking them. And then he bends them. Basically, they get fixed. And then he said they could dig out my eyes, and turns around and pokes his own eyeballs out. Blood starts pouring out of his eye holes. And then Trickster says, "But no country western music, please. Every man has his limits." Michael tells Trickster he thought it was just a video game, and Trickster says trust him to play the second disc. Trickster says Michael's more than just a voyeur, more than just the voyeur you wish to be. You're in this now. Trickster tells him he wants to help him, but he's got to play all the discs. Trickster disappears, and Michael says he's in deep shit. So the first introduction of Trickster, good back and forth between him and Michael. I think everybody remembers Edward Furlong from the Terminator movie as John Connor. He's not the greatest actor. At least as a kid, I don't think I've seen too much in his adulthood, so I can't comment on his adult movies, or movies as an adult. But as a kid, he wasn't the greatest actor. Even in Terminator 2, he really wasn't the greatest actor. But it's pretty interesting. I love the Trickster character already. He's playing it very serious. I thought he was going to go the Joker route where he was like, joking around a lot, but like bloody. Um, but he didn't. He played it very kind of straight with a little bit of tricking stuff in it. Michael is now we cut to Michael deep in the woods, carrying a bag which obviously has the foot in it. He sits there, he starts digging a hole, and all of a sudden behind him, without him noticing, a foot or a dog appears, a German Shepherd, and essentially just takes the foot out of the bag. Michael turns around and is just basically like, shit. So he tries to coax the dog and give him his foot. You hear a whistle in the distance, and the dog runs off, still having the foot. All of a sudden, the dog turns around, comes back, and just drops the foot. The dog basically goes back to his owner, and the owner comes walking around. Michael and the foot have hidden in the brush, so the owner of the dog can see him. The dog goes over to him again and tries to take the foot. The owner ends up calling the dog over, and they leave. Little bit of an it was kind of a freaky moment, but not really major. But it's still like one of those edge of your seat moments, like, oh, is he gonna get caught? We cut back to the house where basically he buries the foot. We cut back to the house where Michael is now burning his clothes in the fireplace. And Kyle starts banging on the door. Kyle asks where he's been all day and if he skipped school. I guess Michael didn't go to school that day. They didn't really bring that up till now. Michael tells him he had mono, and Kyle asks if there's anything he can do for him, And Michael's like, "Nah, I really just need to go rest." Kyle asks if he can come in, and Michael says it's not really a good idea right now. Kyle asks if he's heard. Michael heard about the murder. Michael said he did, and Kyle says, "Man, it's amazing. There's a murder in our own neighborhood." Michael essentially yells at him, going, "It's not that cool, It's really not that bad. Somebody died. Like, don't be an asshole." And Kyle's like, "Okay, whatever." And then Kyle asks to borrow the brain scan disc since Michael's laid up, and Michael just goes off on him, just yells at him, tells Michael essentially to fuck off and get away from him, and leave him alone about the game, and just slams the door into Kyle's face. Kyle knocks on the door again. Michael opens the door, and Kyle just flips him the bird and walks away. So then we cut upstairs to Michael's room where we get some more metal music, and then the doorbell rings again, and this time it's Kimberly. He goes and answers. She asks if she can come in. The sheriff car slowly drives by, and Kimberly basically tells him that they're all over the neighborhood. Kimberly went to all of Michael's teachers and got his homework for the week for him. She also got like the mail and the home and newspaper. She asks about him stopping over and about when he tried to stop over earlier, and he says, "Oh, it was about some homework." She basically goes, "But we don't really have any classes together." And he's like, "Oh yeah, you're right, yeah." Well, she hands him the mail, and there's a newspaper, and he sees a headline in the newspaper about the murder that essentially he committed last night. He goes to the mail a little bit, and in the mail he sees the new brain scan package. He panics a little, drops the mail. Kimberly asks if everything is okay, and he tells her she should probably go. Basically, she leaves, and it dawns on him that he was probably kind of close to getting laid, and he angrily starts throwing stuff around and ends up breaking the second disc. We cut to him. He's lying down in bed, and Igor calls over the telephone. He's got a telephone call. He answers it, and it's Trickster. Trickster asks where the second disc is, and Michael says he can't play it. Trickster asks what he'll say to the cops when they start asking why basically say, what are you going to do when they start asking, why did you leave, Mr. Brower, why did you leave school on the night of the murder? Where were you on the night of the murder? Where were you alone on that murder? Where's your father, Mr. Brower? And where's your mother? That Michael just loses it, tells him to shut up. Trickster says, I don't believe they'll find that answer satisfactory. So Trickster is in the room now, by the way. I didn't write that down, but he did come back into the room. Michael says they haven't found them yet. And Trickster says they haven't found the witnesses yet, and there's still time to play the second. Michael says they haven't found him yet. Trickster says they also haven't found the witnesses yet, and there's still time to play the second disc. Michael says he doesn't have it, and Trickster says, don't lie to me. You received it today. Michael tells him he broke the disc, and Trickster has the second disc and tells him the witness has to die. Michael says he'll play it for the police. Trickster says, fine, play it for the police and see where that gets you. Trickster asks him if he's a winner or a loser, and then he leaves. So again, good scenes. Still establishing relationships between. There's a big fight between him and Kyle. Still establishing the relationship between Michael and Kimberly, and then the Trickster is still doing his awesome work. Like T. Ryder Smith is doing an amazing job, and I freaking love it. I love it. I love the Trickster. We now cut to Michael getting ready to play the second disc. And he decides to set up a camera to record him playing it to see what's going on, basically. He turns around and says he's 16, he's terrified, and that if he's the killer, consider this his confession. He starts the game, and then we cut away and we cut back to Michael sitting in his chair, all sweaty again. He looks at the TV, and there's 7 minutes and 23 seconds left. So he gets up. He gets upset that he played. He didn't realize. Apparently, he didn't realize he played it. Turns on the replay of the tape, and all it does is show him sitting in the chair. Gets up and he walks off camera. Michael freaks out, checks the freezer again. This time, he just finds a necklace, and then realizes that the necklace belongs to Kyle. Kyle was the witness. Michael freaks out, starts calling Kyle, basically telling him to pick up. Please be okay, pick up. And Detective Hayden answers the phone. Detective Hayden asks who this is, and Michael hangs up quickly. Again, good scene. I like the idea of him just walking on, because the camera's not going to follow him because it's a static camera, and he's walking off. He's walking off to go take care of the witness. But the next morning, Kimberly basically shows up at his house again, and she says she's heard about Kyle's death, and she's come over to comfort him. Basically, She says Kyle came to her house last night with a petition to restart the horror club and wanted her to bring it to Michael. Michael says he already misses him, and Kimberly basically gives him a hug. We cut to a news report about Kyle and how Detective Hayden is at the school questioning those closest to Kyle. Trickster appears behind Michael, and Michael yells at him, yells at him for killing Kyle. Trickster tells Michael that you killed the witness. Kyle knew things about Michael, and he had to go. Trickster says loose ends like Kyle can't be left to dangle. Michael asks, why are you doing this? And Trickster says Michael chose him, not vice versa. Trickster tells Michael he left a clue behind, though, in the second disc. Oh, sorry about that. Had a sneeze. Michael says no more games. Trickster says Kyle's death is still fresh and it hurts. But do you really feel guilty about what you've done? The part of you that did these things is deep inside, and it's everyone. And it's in everyone. If you don't feel the guilt, why accept the punishment? The doorbell rings and Trickster tells him, don't answer it. If you want this to end, do not answer it. Michael pretty much tells Trickster to fuck off at this point, and he walks and leaves the room. Trickster just sits down in Michael's chair, turns the TV on, and starts watching the Three Stooges. Michael answers the door to Detective Hayden. He reminds Michael, hey, we've met twice before. Hayden asks if they could come inside, and he asks why Michael hasn't been in school. Michael says he's been sick. Michael did let Detective Hayden and Sergeant Martin inside. Hayden says he's talked to his classmates a lot about him, and they were all pretty much called him a freak. Sergeant Martin shows him a newspaper with Kyle's murder, basically a story about Kyle's murder in it, and asks, good friend of yours? Michael says he was his best friend. Hayden says you don't have many friends, do you? Martin asks where he spends most of his time, and Michael tells him hanging around and staying out of trouble. Hayden says your voice is familiar and asks if he called Kyle's house after the murder. Hayden tells him if he's anything but the school misfit, he's going to find out about it. The cops leave, and Hayden calls him a very sad boy. As the cops are sitting outside, and the cops are sitting right outside the door, and Hayden goes, hey, he's a really sad boy. Sergeant Martin already thinks he did it. Like, there's no evidence, but Martin's like, yeah, he did it. And Detective Hayden said he was the one who called and to check the phone records. Hayden also said that there were fresh ashes in the fireplace, and it's summer. Michael goes back to his room where Trickster has made a huge mess eating all the food. Like, he's got, eggs over bananas, and he's eating a raw chicken. Michael says they think it's him, and Trickster says, of course they do. How long will it take them to figure out it was? Trickster asks if Michael has seen today's paper, and it basically shows him an article that Kimberly wrote about an interview with Kyle's best friend. She wrote that Michael said, I miss him already, and sobbed his best friend and president of the still banned horror club. Michael sits down upset. Now, how could she do this to me? Trickster tells Michael, trust me. I only want what you want. Then did the Buddies Forever sign Kyle and Michael used to do, and Michael attacks Trickster, who basically easily blocks the punch. Trickster scratches his hand and asks, and basically he sees him reel back a little bit. He goes, oh, are you scared of blood? Does it remind you of the accident? Michael basically he has blood on his hand, the back of his hand from the scratch, and there's blood on the floor. But he looks down and the blood on his hand is gone, and the blood on the floor essentially turns into a disc. Trickster tells him, play the disc or join your mother. Take your own life, and this shit just got dark. He says Michael has thought about it many times before. He tells him to join his mother, or is he afraid of it like he's afraid of everything else? Kimberly, the principal, of telling his father he's sick of being left alone all the time, of his mother who abandoned him. Again, this shit just got really dark. Trickster says, I'm trying to help you, but you won't let me. Michael asks how. Trickster says, a bargain. Play part 3. But you only need to remove the clue. No killing. Michael says there's no clue, it's just a trick. Trickster tells him, just says, well, you just don't trust me. And then Trickster disappears into the TV. Michael asks how he's supposed to know what the clue even is. And Trickster basically appears back on the TV and goes, are we friends? Michael says, yeah, sure, whatever. Trickster tells him that there's footprints in the mud. However, he won't tell him where. Trickster tells him to play it or he'll never remember the location. Michael says, no killing, right? Trickster tells him whatever happens is up to you, but don't let your time run out. Michael asks if I do. Trickster says, game over. You lose. So again, good scenes. We're establishing that essentially Detective Hayden they already know it. They kind of know it's Michael, but without the evidence. Establishing that the trickster kind of is going to get his way one way or another, no matter what. So again, good scenes. Good scenes so far. I have seen this. I will tell you right now. I've seen this movie a few times since 1994. I like it. I really do like this movie. But we cut to Michael laying in bed with Kimberly. Basically, it's like a dream of him making out with Kimberly. Kimberly climbs on top of him. This is going to be weird when I talk about this later. But it cuts to Michael looking up, and now it's the guy who killed him, who he killed, who reaches down and starts choking him. Wakes up from the nightmare to the doorbell ringing, and it's Kimberly. We get the point of view of Hayden watching from across the street with some binoculars. Michael basically won't answer the door. He opens up the attic window and throws down a copy of the newspaper. Kimberly said she didn't mean for this to happen and that Stacy posted it. She apologizes, but he turns up his heavy metal and sits in the chair, basically ignoring her. Also, though, with him doing this, Detective Hayden approaches the back door, enters the house illegally, may I add, walks over to the fireplace and scoops out some of the fresh ashes, illegally, that he saw earlier. I'm pretty sure all of this is a violation of the Fourth Amendment. We cut to Hayden arranging. Now we cut over to Hayden. He's arranging a neighborhood watch. Basically, groups of 2. Here's one walkie for each group of 2. He tells them if they see anything to report it immediately. And he also tells them that basically he knows that a lot of them have guns. And that if he sees a weapon in a citizen's hands tonight, he's going to not only confiscate the weapon, but that citizen will be arrested. We cut back to Michael getting ready to play the third disc. He enters the game and has 30 minutes now to find the clue. We see Michael sneaking around outside of the house and finds the footprint in the garden, in the soil in the garden, and he covers it up. What he doesn't know is Sergeant Martin is inside the house in the living room dusting for fingerprints. The phone rings in the house, and it's Trickster calling the house to report Michael in the yard. Sergeant Martin sees Michael and goes chasing off after him into the woods. Then we see some of the citizens walking through the woods, drinking beer as they walk. And Michael is almost spotted, but he hides. He's really good at hiding. Michael is almost home as he sees a cop with a flashlight come around the corner. He ducks down into the plants. The cop goes to leave, but then he hears a twig snap. Turns around, but he sees a raccoon, so he figures, it's just a raccoon. Don't worry about it. Michael continues sneaking around the neighborhood onto the construction site, which I believe is close to his house. And then a citizen grabs Michael and tries to call, and basically he struggles with Michael and tries to call Hayden at the same time. During the struggle, they end up hitting a board, and a fuck ton of bricks just come down and land on the citizen, killing him. And then we find out that the citizen was actually the principal, Principal Fromberg, and he's calling. He was calling, fighting, struggling with Michael, calling. Trying to get Hayden to come over there. That he got the killer, or he got somebody sneaking around, all that good stuff. So Fromberg's dead by brick. Hayden heads over towards the construction site, and Michael is still running through the construction site, and then the dog basically he ends up hiding in like the foundation of a building underneath some stuff, and then the dog from earlier shows up, enters the building he's hiding in, and sits down right beside him. Michael starts begging the dog to go away. Then the dog walks out. There's like no point for the fucking dog at this point. But as the dog walks out of the building, we see the citizens, and the citizens say, "Hey, that guy has a gun," and one of the citizens raises up and shoots the guy with the gun, who ends up being Sergeant Martin. So the citizen shoots and kills Sergeant Martin right before he tells him that he's a cop. Martin dies as Hayden shows up on scene. Michael's running away, and he runs it right into a security guard. And the security guard grabs Michael and asks what he thinks he's doing, and that they just shot the killer over there. Tells him to go home. Go home, kid. We just shot the killer over there. We go over to Hayden, who's checking on Martin, and then Hayden stands up, looks at the citizens, and goes, "Who would like to tell his wife?" Meanwhile, Kimberly is standing on her balcony or in her window and sees Michael walking back to his house. She yells to him, but he doesn't respond to her. He returns with 1 minute and 50 seconds left. Trickster appears on the screen clapping for Michael. He tells him he did a magnificent job and that the neighborhood is covered in blood. Michael yells at him that he said he wouldn't have to kill this time. Trickster tells Michael, "Your hands are clean. It was self-defense." Trickster screams at Michael and scratches the screen, and there was a witness, and he knows who the witness is. So in part 4, basically, Kimberly is the witness, and Michael has to kill the witness. So that scene ends great. It was kind of funny watching the cop get shot because of the drunk citizens, but at the same time kind of sad. But yeah, so Sergeant Martin dies via drunk asshole shooting a shotgun or shooting a rifle, and Principal Fromberg dies via a pallet of fucking bricks falling on him. Good kills, good ways to go. Ties into the story. What the intensity and the kind of edge of your seat excitement of him trying to get back to his house and to escape the the neighborhood watch and the cops and that. Pretty good, pretty fun. And then the revelation now that Kimberly is the final witness, and that's who essentially he's got to handle in part 4. So the next morning, a sheriff's car pulls up next to Hayden, who's still outside, doing a stakeout of Michael's house. And he hands him an envelope with forensics results that were illegally gotten, by the way. He tells him that the phone call did come from Kyle's house, or the phone call to Kyle's house did indeed come from Michael. The report. Then Hayden looks at the forensic report, and the forensic report says that traces of blood were found in the ashes and matched the blood type of the original murder victim. So essentially, they got all the evidence they need to arrest Michael, but of course, it was illegally gotten. So yeah. Back inside, and Trickster is trying to get a sleeping Michael's attention. Michael asks Trickster what he wants. Trickster said, You know who the witness is and what has to be done in the fourth disc. Michael tells him he's going to go to Hayden and turn himself in. This makes Trickster appear in person again, and Trickster tells Michael he wanted the ultimate experience in terror. Terror is in the doing, not watching horror films like some child. And God damn it, I'm attacked again. And it's not spying on Kimberly like some pervert. Michael says he won't kill her, and Trickster says she'll tell. Trickster tells him only Michael can stop this. Kimberly's life or his life. Or Michael's life. He has to choose. Kimberly shows up at Michael's door again, and Michael just basically won't answer when she knocks. Michael is just staring at the screen where Trickster was a minute ago. So then we cut to later that night. Kimberly is laying in bed, and Michael is putting the final disc in. He tells Igor to dial Brainscan, and this time, Igor just says, "Goodbye, Master," as Michael now has 15 minutes to kill the witness. So basically we go to Michael sneaking across the lawn and enters Kimberly's house, finds a pair of scissors sitting next to a sewing kit, and slowly starts to climb the stairs. Meanwhile, Hayden is outside looking menacingly, of course, because it's Frank Langella. Michael enters Kimberly's room where sees her sleeping. He closes and locks the door and walks over to Kimberly's bed. He looks down at her and Trickster appears behind him. He asks, "What are you waiting for?" He tells Michael to kill her, and Michael says, "I can't." Trickster says he'll do it himself, and Michael swipes at him with the scissors. Michael asks who he is, and Trickster says he's surprised he still doesn't know. Trickster tells him, "I'm you, Michael." Michael stabs the Trickster, and a hand comes out of the Trickster's stomach and grabs him, and then basically starts to pull Michael in. Michael basically reaches up and pokes the Trickster's eyes out, and a green pus like this awesome little green slime comes out of the eyes. It was pretty cool. As Trickster and Michael struggle, they start to all of a sudden bond together, like meld together, and this electricity is surrounding them. Needless to say, Kimberly wakes up, starts screaming her head off. Trickster opens his mouth wide and essentially bites Michael's head off. And Michael enters through Trickster's eyeball and starts falling down this a bit, like through some kind of CGI abyss. It looks cool, but again, 1994 graphics aren't the best. Kimberly looks on scared as the two have now vanished, and she's basically got the "what the fuck" look on her face. Michael then pops up on the bed, but half of his face is veins. So basically, I just start calling him Demon Michael. Could call him Trickster Michael, but I like Demon Michael better. She tells Michael how scared she is as Michael stares at her. Demon Michael has the scissors and he stalks over her. She begs him not to do this. Kimberly tells him that she loves him, and Demon Michael says, "Well, you would say it. You would do anything to save your own life." And she said, "No, I really do love you." She says she kept it a secret and never told anyone. She knows he watches her from his window and that she watches him as well. I guess is cool, except I think he wins in that one because he gets to see her taking her clothes off. Demon Michael seems to change as Kimberly shows him the pictures that she's been taking of him. Still gripping the scissors as Trickster leaves Michael's body. Trickster says he knew he couldn't do it on his own. Michael says, "Game over. You lose." So Trickster says, "Perhaps." But first he walks over to the door and says, "Surprise!" And there's Detective Hayden. He sees Michael standing over Kimberly with the scissors. He calls Michael a murderer and in slow motion aims his revolver at him. Kimberly starts screaming, Michael starts screaming, and Hayden shoots Michael in the chest. Trickster the entire time just standing behind Detective Hayden. Then all of a sudden, Michael screams and pops up like he was just popping up from a nightmare in his chair, and he's in his room again. And he starts going, "Oh my God, oh my God, oh my God." The voice of Brainscan comes on again and says, "Hello there. You've just experienced Brainscan, the ultimate experience in interactive terror. Our special state of the art system." And it continues basically reading all that stuff, and Michael realized that none of it was actually real, that he didn't kill anyone, Kyle's still alive, Kimberly's still alive, he's still alive, everyone's still alive, and that there is no trickster. He gets pissed and just starts throwing stuff around the room, starts destroying all the computer stuff. In the background, they're trying to give him some calming techniques from Brainscan, and he busts that up real quick. Then he hears Kyle banging on the door. Michael, of course, is excited to see him. Kyle tells him it's a good thing he didn't order that brain scan thing because some kid in Texas had an aneurysm from playing it. Michael and Kyle decide to go to the party next door to finally talk to Kimberly. He walks over. He walks over to ask Stacy where Kimberly is. Stacy's kind of a bitch. Tells him that she's upstairs with Taylor. Uh, Michael says stop being a bitch and goes up to find Kimberly. Then Kyle starts hitting on Stacy, and then basically Kyle and Stacy are kind of going to hook up now. Michael finally finds Kimberly, asks if they can go talk alone. Michael finally asks her out, and Kimberly goes, no. She tells him it's not a good time, because he's like, oh no. She tells him it's just not a good time for him to ask her out, and that she'll think about it. So he's like, oh, so it's a maybe. Okay, it's a maybe? It's a maybe? Yeah, he gets all excited. She gives him a quick peck on the lips and goes back to the party. Michael basically finds the picture she's taken in her drawer, smiles, and then we go to school the school bell rings the next day. Michael enters Fromberg's office and tells Fromberg he has a game he wants to show the horror club. Brain scan. Trickster appears from behind Fromberg laughing as Michael leaves the office. Roll credits. That's brain scan. It does. It kind of went out there a couple of times, with the whole. We'll talk. We'll talk about that here in a moment when we discuss the review and stuff, my review and stuff like that. But right now, let's talk a little bit of trivia, and then we'll bring this first edition of big bloody binge on the Owl Night Network to a close. So I don't have any stats for the budget, but opening weekend, April 24th, 1994, Brainscan pulled in $1.7 million. Gross in U.S., Canada, and worldwide are both $4.3 million total in theaters. Brainscan was not in theaters very long. I think it was only in theaters for about 2 weeks. Couple of trivia notes from IMDb. Director John Flynn did not get along with Edward Furlong during filming. He later recalled Edward Furlong was a 15-year-old kid who couldn't act. I can agree with that. Edward Furlong was never the best actor. You had to slap him awake every morning. I don't want to get into knocking people, but it was not a big Eddie Furlong fan. Jamie Gallen, who played Kyle, was actually 27 at the time. Originally based on the computer game Brainwaves, released as brain scanners in Europe after the film was released. Let's see. The film was a critical and financial failure. It was withdrawn from cinema after only 2 weeks, guys. That's a terrible run. And I like the movie. Yes, we'll get to the review. T. Ryder Smith, who plays Trickster, admitted that he was uncredited voice of Igor, Michael's automated phone program. The voiceover was recorded with Smith doing 3 different impersonations, and he says the filmmakers used his impersonation of Boris Karloff, which is fine. I like the Igor. Let's see. Edward Furlong was the same age as his character. However, Kyle, Kimberly, and Stacy were all played by actors in their 20s, which makes it a little weird that at one point Stacy and Michael Kimberly and Michael were making out as Edward Furlong was only 15 at the time. And I want to say Kimberly was in her 20s at least. Just saying. So the song on the CD that Trickster played is "Welcome to This World" by Primus. The film was shot in Montreal, which that's not a surprise. Even to this day, a lot of movies are shot in Montreal versus anywhere else. So yeah. Let's see. I'm trying to see if there's any other interesting. Yeah, this was 3 years after Edward Furlong was in Terminator 2, Judgment Day. This is Amy Hargreaves' debut. So her first movie was Brain Scan. Kimberly's first movie was Brain Scan. Uh, there's not really a lot of too much interesting trivia, but we'll call that a day. Let's get to the review of Brain Scan. And I want to hear all your reviews too. If you've seen this movie, if you haven't seen it, you can find it on Tubi. I'll tell you that right now. I got really excited because it's on Amazon for $3.99 to rent. That's how I was going to rent this movie because I do own it, but it is in a box in a storage shed right now. But I got excited because right as I was going to do it, Tubi released Brain Scan, so you can watch it for free on Tubi or $3.99 on Amazon. There is a version of the movie on YouTube. Again, um, it's probably safe to watch it because, like I said, there is the closest thing to nudity you get in the movie is some side boob when she takes her shirt off, and then when she turns around, very briefly. May I add, you might be able to see something, but that's about it. Um, so yeah. So I first saw Brain Scan, I guess in 94, 95 when it came out on VHS or when it came out on HBO. I think it was on HBO. I watched it. I loved it. I watched it a few more times because you remember back in the day, HBO would play the movies over and over again. Um, and I really liked it. I enjoyed it. And watching it today, it still holds up to me. It still looks great. You still get the cheesy '90s, CGI stuff or the computer graphics and that. I'm more of a static. I'm more of a lot practical effects guy than I am CGI. I'd much rather see a movie use practical effects versus the computer graphics. Um, and it was amazing. It's a fun movie to watch. I know it gets a lot of critics hate it, but there's a lot of movies out there like that where critics, 30 years ago, critics hated the movie, and then all of a sudden now, 30 years later, people are still, people come to watch it. Rocky Horror Picture Show, very famously, did not do well in theaters. You know, the critics hated it, and now it's still one of the most popular movies of all time. You know, 50 years later almost, they're still playing it in theaters. But I loved it. Like I said, the Trickster is a great character. I enjoyed the Trickster. Michael's a little annoying just because again, Edward Furlong's not a good actor. He's just not. Uh, Kimberly was okay. Kyle got a little annoying. Stacy wasn't in the movie very long. I'm a big Frank Langella fan, and I like Detective Hayden. He wasn't like a complete asshole like they like to do with cops, especially veteran cops in movies. The story was creative. It was very creative. Kills were creative. So out of 5, we're going to go ahead and give this 4.5 eye pokes. This is like I said, it's a good movie. I encourage people to watch it. I've watched it before. So that's going to bring us to the end of the show. I hope everyone enjoyed the first episode of Bloody Binge on the Owlite Network. To find us, you can reach me at Bloody Binge Movie Podcast on Twitter, on the Facebook group. You can also find Bloody Binge on Twitter if you want to watch some of the older episodes. We are also, if you want to download the audio only versions of some of the past episodes, you can find those on Spotify, on Amazon, on Apple Podcasts, and pretty much on Spreaker and anywhere Spreaker has lists their podcast, which is pretty much everywhere. You can download the audio version of this episode and many others. Um, You can also find me every other Wednesday on Matt and Monsters, the wrestling podcast that Owl Light Network puts on with Raz and Matt. Of course, you can also hopefully find me every week for right now until September. The schedule might change in September because I do start Haunted House season. I will be acting in the Hell's Dungeon, so you can also find me at Hell's Dungeon here in Dayton, Ohio. But my plan is every Friday at 4 p.m. I'll be bringing you guys a new movie. Our focus here on the Bloody Binge is with horror movies, cult movies, exploitation, grindhouse, low budget, high budget, just movies that a lot of I want to try to do movies a lot of people haven't seen or heard of, so that people can can educate themselves and um learn how many movies are there. People don't realize that there's millions and millions and millions of movies out there that you haven't seen. And I want to bring those to you. So I hope everybody enjoyed this first episode. Keep watching horror and tune in again. Let me get the right video. Tune in again next week and keep a lookout. I will announce the next movie on the Bloody Binge movie podcast pages. Thanks for joining me. Have a great night and keep watching horror.